Well, good morning. I'd like to say welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming out today to our third Thursday on this beautiful May morning. And welcome to the Harold R. Benson Research and Demonstration Farm. My name is Edwin Chavez, and I am the Small Farms Outreach Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator here at KSU. First, before we normally get started, we just make a couple announcements. And I would just like to say that next Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday, we're going to have our beef cattle meeting at 6 p.m. Please, ma'am, and please, sir, you're welcome to attend in this same room right here. That's starting at 6 p.m. So we're going to go ahead and start our program. We're delighted to have Dr. Andrew Ray. He is our chair for our aquaculture department here at Kentucky State University. So he will give an introduction of KSU aquaculture and innovation. And at this time, let's give our undivided attention to Dr. Ray.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chavez. Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. I'm glad to be with you. Yeah, I was just assigned appointed to the chair position, chair of the School of Aquaculture and Aquatic Sciences on April 6th. So I'm a little over a month in now, and I'd like to introduce you to our program, tell you a little bit about what we're doing and what we might be doing, what we will be doing most likely in the future. This is our KSU Aquaculture Research Center. And what we've got there is 33 research ponds. They're dirt bottom ponds. And most of those are a 10th acre, 24 of them are, and the remainder are 1/20th acre. We've got a shrimp greenhouse up here. It's not shrimp anymore, it's aquaponics. This is our reservoir that feeds the lower ponds and tanks, mesocosm tanks. Got a nutrition building here, as well as some office space. We've got a processing room, we've got a disease lab, fish health lab, hatchery, and some other insulated and controlled research spaces. This is usually the highlight of the tour when we show people around, and it is our Aquaculture Production Technologies building. This highlights some of the up-and-coming types of aquaculture systems that I work with primarily, which are recirculating aquaculture systems. And it's a 1,300 square meter climate-controlled building. And recirculating aquaculture means that we have filters to clean the water so we can use the water for a long period of time. We take out the solids and the nutrients, the ammonia, so that the fish live in a healthy, safe environment without having to discharge much water at all. Aquaponics is a part of that as well, where we have not only the fish, but the plants, which you'll see some aquaponics around. Dr. Novello leads our genetics research and extension program. He's been working quite a bit with tilapia, but other species as well. He's doing some largemouth bass and some others now. There's a catfish. This is a student using one of his tools, which is to look at the gonadal development inside a fish. This is an ultrasound system that they use to examine when the fishes are mature. Some of the other genetics work that's been done has focused on koi in the past, inheritance of some of the nice features that these fish can have for the ornamental trade industry, such as the specialized fins and color inheritance patterns. As I mentioned, though, Dr. Novello has moved into more tilapia research now. My focus is on inland marine aquaculture systems. So we are producing fresh seafood right here in Kentucky in a landlocked state. And I have worked primarily with shrimp over the years, marine shrimp. And you'll remember some of the prawn work that's been done in the past. The marine shrimp grow better in smaller tanks. They're not cannibalistic like the freshwater prawns were or are. And so they're really the species that most of the shrimp production in the world is moving towards. And then recently I've started working with the olive flounder, which is a really exciting animal. It just basically lays on the bottom of the tank most of the time. When it's time to eat, they come up and eat, and then they go back and lay down. So what that does is makes them a very efficient protein source. They don't spend a lot of energy swimming and doing other things. They're just very laid back fish, just kind of lay there. These are some of the systems I use. We had the high tunnel systems, which were a kind of a very simple way of farming shrimp in a hoop house with no heat, just a blower and a settling chamber was the only things we had in addition to the tanks. Those were damaged in the ice storm earlier this year, unfortunately, and they're going to be probably demolished and used, and that space will be used for Janelle's greenhouse, which she may talk about later. And this is our indoor, little more high-tech type of shrimp production system. There's a farm in Ann Arbor that has invested $3.8 million into using this in a building that has replicated systems. And, kind of the target audience, the target farmer in that type of case, this is a picture of that farm in the lower left corner, is to target high-end consumers that want a fresh, local, never frozen, domestic product, because really most of the shrimp you find in the grocery store are imported, and you don't know where they came from. We have some advanced filtration systems. You can see the lower right picture, which is one pass of that brown water goes through our filtration system and comes out really clear. And now, one of the things I'd like to make the point of is that we do this for fish, but we can do this for other things too. We can do this for industrial waste. We can do this for other agriculture waste. We can do this for drinking water, for instance. And Janelle's going to give a presentation later in the day, but she focuses on our freshwater aquaponics program. And this is the greenhouse one of the greenhouses that she manages as a demonstration facility where she highlights all the different types of aquaponics systems that you can do, and farmers can come in there and learn about that. And I'm sure she's going to mention it, but there's the aquaponics boot camp starting up this Saturday, and I'll let her describe that in more detail, of course. But she's looking at a variety of different issues, got a nice has some really nice genetics capabilities now, and I won't go into the details of the genetic analyses and such, but she's using it to look at the bacteria and microbes on the plant roots and how those help the plants grow, as well as a food safety perspective on that. How safe these plants are for people to consume when they've been grown in water that's been exposed to the same water that fish are grown in. And she's working on this machine basically can tell you the elemental breakdown of a substance, and you can find out, if you want to, you can find out all the different elements and the concentrations of each that are in there. And that's useful for us from a nutritional standpoint and some other information as well. Dr. Simmons does our in-pond raceways work, and he's going to give a presentation today at 1:30. So my goal here is just to kind of give you a brief overview of the program. There'll be more details coming, of course. But the nice thing about the in-pond raceways, in my opinion, is that this is at the farm right over here, just down the hill a bit. So if you get a chance today, I don't know if it's on the schedule. Yep, I think it is. Okay, so you'll be going down there to look at the system that he's set up. This is a farm pond, a large farm pond. You can't put fish in there and reliably harvest the fish because there's parts of the pond that are 15 feet deep. There's plants growing down there. Who knows what's in the bottom of the pond, right? But you can put these raceways in, these in-pond tanks basically, and put your fish in them, and then you can feed them, you can manage them, and you can harvest them much easier than you could if the fish were loose in the pond. So it's a really nice setup. And I think there's a lot of potential for farmers around Kentucky to use that type of a technique in a lot of these farm ponds that we find around the state. Dr. Rossi manages our aquatic animal nutrition lab, and basically the name of the game with aquaculture nutrition these days is to replace fish meal. We still rely, unfortunately, quite a bit on fish meal for the primary protein source in many of our diets for our animals. We're using more and more soybean meal and corn meal, and that's a good thing. But he's looking at ingredients like algae meal and hemp meal, and other sustainable products that can be grown right here in Kentucky to replace that and have a more sustainable diet as well as a nutritious diet, and then, of course, looking at the nutritional properties of the fish for consumers. Because fish is, well, I'm not going to say it. Well, it's one of the healthiest animal proteins that you can find. It's very low in saturated fat, high protein content, but it has the omega-3 fatty acids in it, which are good for our heart and our brain development, especially in young children. And the American Heart Association recommends that people eat 2 meals containing fish per week. And most of us, including myself sometimes, unfortunately, fall short of that goal. But we'd all be a lot healthier if we ate more fish, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do. Dr. Durbrow also has a presentation just after mine, so I won't go into a lot of details, but he manages our fish health research program and extension program. The extension is a very large part of that. This is just an example of his work using an app to help diagnose fish diseases. So you can put in the symptoms that you see or that you find in the fish, and it'll help you to diagnose those. And then he can get you some medicated feed, which he'll talk about if you need it. So the history of our education program. The program overall started out in 1983, and research was a big part of that early on. Started with extension, though, and they started teaching classes in 91, and in 98 developed what is our crown jewel of our academics, is our Master of Science in Aquaculture and Aquatic Science. We've graduated many students. There's a student in the audience, an alum in the audience. Half of our students have gone on to earn PhDs and continued in research. The other half have gotten into some real interesting careers. And in 2000, we developed our online course program, and that's going strong. We have 12 courses. I think we might be up to 13 now, actually. I probably need to update that. Most of these are offered virtually, so you can take them anywhere in the world. You can take them, if you're working a full-time job, you can schedule this around your work schedule. And one big opportunity we have right now is our certificate in aquaculture. We offer it at the bachelor's level and at the graduate level. And a lot of people have been able to take that. We're really pushing that right now to some extent. And they've been able to take that. Oftentimes their employer pays for it, let's say Fish and Wildlife or Department of Ag or something like that. And they're able to use that to justify promotions and development in their career. Like I said, our Master of Science degree is kind of our crowning jewel. You can also minor in aquaculture and aquatic science. And the big thing we offer, and there's no program like this in Kentucky, there's no program like this in the region. People will say Purdue has an aquatic science program. They do. Ohio State kind of has an aquaculture program. That's true, but nobody has the facilities that we have. And nobody gives these students hands-on experiences like we do. We are the program for the region, not just for aquaculture, but for water. We do all things water, and that's a big distinction that I want to make. And I'm going to talk more about what we're doing in the future. This is our STEM education program. Dr. Thompson has aquaponics systems primarily in high schools and some middle schools. There's about 27 such systems around the state right now, and this is a real good way to get students interested in aquatic science and get them get them some hands-on learning experiences. You can talk about engineering and mathematics. You can calculate feed rates, and you can look at nutrient flows. So it's ecology. It's a real good way, real good teaching tool for students. And a lot of these students are starting now to take dual credit courses. So if you have high school age children that are thinking about college, it's a great way for them to get college credit. At the same time, they're getting high school credit. And I'm jealous that they didn't have that when I was in high school. And I had to start out from 0 in college. But some of these students start out with 12 or even more credit hours when they come to college, which is just amazing. It gives them a real head start and saves money, really. Saves them money and gets them into our workforce quicker so we can develop a strong Kentucky workforce. We are all things water. We are expanding. We are growing. We are looking at expanding that production technologies building. We have some funding in place to do that. We have funding in place for the design and engineering of a 30,000 square foot research facility. It'll be the top of the line facility of its kind in the world. We are renovating some of our existing structures, a little slower than I'd like, but we're doing it. And we're looking at 2 new greenhouses. We've got funding for one, primarily devoted to nutrition probably at this point, but we'll see. And then Janelle, I think we'll probably talk about her plans for the greenhouse she has included in her the NSF grant that she's a part of. We're looking at all kinds of new technologies and things. And this is research, of course, but something like artificial intelligence. It's all the buzz right now. But, really, when I talk to farmers, especially larger scale farmers, a little bit of AI to control when you fertilize, how you fertilize, where to apply chemicals in your fields, things of that nature. It's really starting to make some financial sense because it saves you money, it saves your bottom line, and it's not all that expensive in many cases. In aquaculture, we can use it for the water quality data we collect. We collect just piles of data over years, and there's no way that a person can look at that and actually interpret it and make much sense out of it to make feeding predictions for the fish, and that saves money. So it's really not pie in the sky anymore. It's actually something that kind of makes sense in many cases. Robotics and things of that nature, people talk about. Yeah, I know. It's not going to work at the small scale right now, but there's people out there like like Dr. Simmons works with the engineering crew at UK, and they can reverse engineer a lot of these things. And you're just talking about circuit boards and wires and motors that turn. You can actually, I don't want to say dumb it down, but simplify it to where it's cheap and saves you money. And a lot of farmers I talk to are really worried about labor costs, and when you can overcome some of those labor costs, it starts to make sense. Anyway, we're looking at involving the industry to a greater extent. We want to be an umbrella for everyone. We love our small-scale farmers. A lot of people have farm ponds around the state that we can help you with. A lot of people have ideas we can help you with. We've got 5 marine shrimp farms going in Kentucky right now, just as an example. We've got other farmers too, aquaponics and bass, catfish, and others. And we want to help everybody, but we're also looking towards big industry development, big industry investment into the program like Cargill. And the reason is because these people can help us and we can help them, and then we build a better relationship, and our students can get jobs at these places. And our farmers can get products from these places. And it is, I believe, a win-win for everybody. You got to get the right agreement in place. You don't want them doing too much, but it's a real opportunity I think we need to look at. And most research universities do that. Most research universities have strong industry partnerships. And in the federal funding landscape today, I think it's really important, especially. We are all things water. We are developing a bachelor's degree in aquatic science. It's the only one of its kind in the state. It's the only one of its kind in the region, really, because of what I mentioned before, because of our physical resources, and because of the expertise that we have in our program. We have some of the world's leading experts in aquaculture and aquatic science right now, and we're recruiting more all the time. And we have excellent students, faculty, staff. It's a really well-oiled and amazing machine, and I'm glad to be a part of it. This bachelor's degree program will meet the American Fisheries Society standards, which means our students can get jobs at Fish and Wildlife, not just Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and all the wildlife agencies in every one of the 50 states in the United States. There's a lot of jobs out there when you think about that. We're developing some courses such as marine biology, fisheries management, aquatic facilities maintenance, which is not something that you see in a lot of programs. Really learning how to drive a tractor, how to do some carpentry skills, some at least minor electrical skills. Plumbing skills is a big thing we do. And our students leave here learning those hands-on, real-world trade-type tools that they can use in their careers going forward. We have a person who's accepted the position of Aquaculture Technology and Management. That's a new assistant professor that'll be joining us in July. Really excited about that. He has some connections with UK engineering as well. So we're looking at, again, simplifying some of these technologies that can help our farmers. We're going to get into pond management. Kentucky Fish and Wildlife has gotten out of that in a large part, and we see a real opportunity here to help people with their ponds. I hope you do go down and look at the pond down here today and get some ideas about what is possible. We're looking at water treatment. I mean, this is a massive industry. Buffalo Trace just a couple of years ago, built a $2 million water treatment facility. And it's called, what they call these is a packaged water treatment plant. And they were getting fined by the Frankfurt sewer plant and things because they sometimes would release some things that just accidentally, would get into the water. $2 million facility, there's jobs there. That's a $52 billion industry in this country, packaged water treatment plants. Those are real jobs. A student in Lawrenceburg Water Treatment Plant starts out at $50,000 a year, a new employee. With a bachelor's degree in aquatic science, they start out even higher. And we're looking at certificates and things of that nature as well. So there's real opportunities, real jobs, and we want to be on the leading edge of everything we can be. We're here to support our farmers any way we can, and I'd love to hear from you if you have other ideas or ever want to come tour the facilities. You will not be disappointed. We have really nice facilities, and you'll meet some really nice people along the way. And then here's a little bit about our social media. Thank you. I think I have a little time to answer a question or two, right? If you have one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Where can you get them?
Right now, the only place to get the olive flounder is from the University of Miami. They're one of our partners, and they have a breeding program there. They're interested in expanding that breeding program and developing an industry in the United States. So they're the lead on that, at least right now. We're not allowed to breed them. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's a matter of timing. They're a research university like we are, so they have to get. If we give them about a 2-month heads up, they can get some ready for us, and they ship them overnight they're about an inch long when they ship them. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to show you some if you want to come by the facility. Miami, yeah, they do. It's the Rosenthal School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. I know that's a mouthful, but Dr. John Stieglitz is my contact down there. And they produce the flounder for us. I can get you in touch with him if you want to. I can put you in touch with him if you'd like. Any more questions? Hearing none, I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Durbrow. Thank you all very much.
This is the advanced, yeah. And that's the pointer right there.
Well, you have to shine it on that screen, and
Okay.
it makes that white
That
circle.
white circle,
I
yeah.
wasn't having real good
Yeah,
success
okay,
with it.
yeah, I'll work on that, yeah. Good morning, I'm Dr. Bob Durbrow, State Specialist for Aquaculture for Kentucky. And we're just excited to have Dr. Ray as our new chair for aquaculture. He just started fairly recently, and we're just looking forward to his leadership. I'd like to introduce my staff. Gunnar Cerny started with my program in September, and he comes out of Indiana. He's from Indiana, and he was working for Aqua Bounty, which was the GMO salmon production facility in Indiana. It's not in business right now, but it was real successful for a short period of time there. It was pretty interesting. I think that facility is still in operation, but not with GMO salmon at this time. And Gunnar's aquaculture oriented, and he does disease diagnostics as well. And Hamid Marvasti started 2 months later in November of last year. And Hamid is focused a lot on the disease diagnostics in our laboratory. And after my talk, he's going to present as well. And he has some good experience from Canada, from the Vancouver area, from some laboratories up there, as well as Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. His work originally started in Iran with shrimp diseases there, and there's a lot of trout. I think Iran is maybe the largest trout producer in the world, I believe. So anyway, I just want to encourage everyone to interact with the extension personnel here, or with the university personnel. So if during breaks and in between or whatever, just have during lunch, just get to meet each other. And if you're a university worker, go out of your way to meet some of the stakeholders that are here. I know there's a tendency for the university people to maybe tend to stick together, but just kind of spread out and meet some new people, and we're here to help you all. The idea is for us to do research here. Once the research finding is discovered, the extension people like myself, Gunnar, and Hamid take the information out into the field to help people to improve their life, to increase their profits, basically, on the farm. And then we get ideas from the farmers that we're working with, or the landowners, and then we take those ideas back to the researchers to give them ideas. So that's kind of the way the system works in land grant. So let's see. Okay, so let's see, back up here. So what I'm going to be speaking about this morning is when you're growing fish in Kentucky and surrounding states, you don't always have very good access to aquaculture supplies, including feed and medicated feed in particular. So what we were finding is that if we have a disease case come into our lab and we diagnose it as internal bacteria, we say you should use medicated feed on your fish, and the fish requires like a trout feed or a bass feed, which typically comes from the state of Idaho, or sometimes Utah. In any case, it takes a long time to get that feed ordered and made and then shipped all the way from multiple states away, and then it's expensive to ship it too. So a lot of times the farmers would say, well, I'll just use some other kind of treatment that's not as good, but it will kind of work. So we have marginal success treating diseases. And so our idea was to buy the medicated feed ahead of time, house it here at the university in freezers, walk-in freezers. Then when the farmer needs to use the medicated feed and gets a prescription or VFD from a veterinarian, then they can give it to us and we can sell them the feed right there on the spot. So basically that's what this talk's about. Overall, you see with aquaculture, let's see, I have to practice with this pointer here. You can see that over over the years, the blue there is our natural catch from the oceans. And you see it increased a lot up to about 1974. Then at that point, we reached the maximum sustainable yield, and the blue line just levels out. Because if we take more fish from the ocean, it'll just make fewer fish, because you can't take too many fish or you can't have the reproduction that's required for the fisheries. Okay, so trying to get used to this pointer here. So the pink there is aquaculture, and the pink and red are aquaculture. So you can see as the demand for fish keeps going up and up and up, the oceans can't supply anymore. They're kind of flatlined. So all the increased demand for fish is going to have to come and is coming from aquaculture. And right now, aquaculture production surpasses the wild fisheries. So that's kind of interesting. Our per capita consumption has gone up per person, from 30 pounds in 1961 to 50 pounds currently. Those are just rough estimates, and basically those numbers seem to vary depending on where you look, but the bottom line is we're increasing our fish consumption, and therefore we need to increase our fish production. Okay, diseases are a big challenge. Bacteria accounted for the greatest amount of mortalities in aquaculture. And you can see these sick catfish through this clear water there. There's different types of pathogens that we work with. This is just some examples. This is a bass that has a lot of fluid in its body cavities, has bacterial infection, and you can see the red hemorrhaging on the skin. There are diseases like columnaris. You probably have heard of columnaris, caused by that bacteria listed there. ESC in catfish, that's a big problem. And then a real common one is motile Aeromonas septicemia. You probably hear us talk about Aeromonas. The fish have Aeromonas infection, so we try to treat those problems. And medicated feed is usually the answer to those infections when they occur. We're going to go into some alternatives to medicated feed too in a little bit here, so don't be despaired. I know it's here we go. Okay, so basically, being able to access medicated feed, antibiotics is real crucial, and 80% of all medication that is administered to fish comes through the feed. That's the most practical way to get the medication, the antibiotics, into the fish is through feed. It's not invasive. You don't have to inject them or handle them. You just have the medication in the feed. So you can see here that this top part, the yellow hexagon, is it hexagon, Gunner? The yellow hexagon it depicts antibiotic therapy, so medicated feed, basically. Now, there are alternatives. We look here on the green hexagon, vaccination. So there's a tendency, a trend towards developing new vaccines against bacteria and viruses. So just vaccinate the fish ahead of time when they're smaller, and then it reduces the number of bacterial infections that they'll have, and therefore it reduces the need for medicated feed. The next one down, the green one, says pond management. Just different cultural practices is if you don't stock as heavy, don't feed as heavy, that's another approach. Using the bottom hexagon, using probiotics, for example. So Alltech really doesn't make medicated feed, or doesn't make feed basically anymore. They're kind of, Alltech, based out of Nicholasville, is sort of phased out of aquaculture recently. But they were really big there for a while, pushing probiotics, and it's a good thing. Just good ingredients in the feed that promote the growth of good bacteria in the gut of the fish, sort of competing against the pathogens and just not allowing room for the pathogens to occur. So the probiotics, the good bacteria, and the prebiotics that feed the good bacteria, they were promoting that sort of approach, which is excellent. So, basically there's different approaches to medicated feed, but bottom line, if the fish are sick, medicated feed is usually the answer at the moment, so we can't really get around that, at least at this time. Okay, and I mentioned before that medicated feed is a non-invasive way to treat sick fish. The ones that we're looking at, that second bullet there, Romet 30, also another type of Romet is top coat. You can add Romet, top coat it to feed. Terramycin, that can be ordered from the feed mill as well, or TM200 can be bought. You can see that little package, that green and white package on the right there. That can be bought and mixed with vegetable oil with the feed. Aquaflor, so these are the three antibiotics. Aquaflor has to come from a feed mill. The other two, oftentimes, the top two oftentimes come from a feed mill, but they can also be mixed with the feed that you have. So Aquaflor is the only one that has to come from a feed mill just by law. Okay, this is just a table depicting the different types of antibiotics. There's Aquaflor in the top there. The generic name is fluorphenicol. The next, on the left column there, the next one down is sulfadimethoxine plus ormetaprim. Those are the generic components of Romet. And then oxytetracycline is a genetic component of terramycin. And you can see the second column there just shows which kind of diseases each antibiotic is approved by FDA for controlling bacterial diseases. And then the third column there talks about how many consecutive days you need to feed the medicated feed. That needs to be done completely, because if you do a partial treatment of antibiotic, it can develop resistance in the bacteria against that antibiotic. And then there's the withdrawal period. You can see the withdrawal periods range from like 3 days up to about 21 days, actually up to 42 days in some cases, depending on the species of fish and the medication, in order for the antibiotic to be purged out of the system entirely before they're sold on the market. So antibiotics are rarely used in aquaculture because they're so expensive. It's not like people are scrambling to buy antibiotics and feed their fish because, seems like with other animals, it doesn't really make fish grow faster. So you don't have a lot of competition trying to feed more and more antibiotics. That the farmers feed it reluctantly because they have to, and it costs a lot of money. And then when they do feed it, they feed it for the structured length of time and observe the withdrawal periods. So I think, if you hear anything negative about antibiotics with farm fish, that's a little bit of maybe, I don't know, environmentalist kind of extreme propaganda, because basically you always hear, well, you need to buy wild fish. Well, people don't say you need to buy you need to buy buffalo that are roaming out in Wyoming. You don't need to buy cattle that are raised, that are farmed, So anyway, so there's a lot of well, basically that's where our food comes from farms, not from hunting and fishing and wild harvest. Okay, so the lack of infrastructure in regions like Kentucky and surrounding states is a challenge to Kentucky farmers. So, and I mentioned this before, if they want to get medicated feed, they have to ship it in from Utah or Idaho. It's real expensive. It takes like 11 to 15 days. Sometimes people say 3 weeks to get it in. So by the time the medicated feed would arrive on the farm, the fish have stopped dying. They're not eating anymore, or it's, just kind of, or all the fish have died or whatever. So it's not a very good solution to depend on getting the feed from another state. So that's why we decided to get the feed ourselves, keep it here, and then we have it available for the fish farmer whenever they need it. Okay, so our objectives of the research project, this was a USDA-funded research project to evaluate and survey the perceptions of farmers towards the effectiveness of medicated feed. That's kind of a general question we addressed. To evaluate and survey farmers' perceptions of our university storing the medicated feed in walk-in freezers to make it more accessible to farmers in Kentucky and surrounding states. By the way, In order to do that legally, we had to become a VFD distributor. That's Veterinary Feed Directive. It's like a prescription from a veterinarian. So we can be a distributor. We have FDA approval to be a distributor of this feed that requires a VFD from the vet to the farmer, and then it's presented to us, and then we can sell the feed to the farmer. Then thirdly, our objective was to assess and survey farmers' perceptions of the effectiveness of the fish health services at KSU. How well are we doing as a diagnostic lab in identifying the problem, making good recommendations? So basically, farmers submit a fish sample to the Fish Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, and it's free. There's no charge for it. And then if there's internal bacteria, oftentimes we suggest that the farmer use medicated feed. And in this study, we purchased steelhead trout feed, which is a good feed for bass. It was from Shredding, the company Shredding. We ordered it in 2.5 millimeter, 3.5, 5.5, and 7.5 millimeter sizes. And in the study, we ordered a total of 440 bags. So the feeding rate over the 10-day treatment period we ordered Aquaculture as well as terramycin medicated feeds, both of the medicated feeds. And you can see the third bullet there, the second from the bottom, just talks about the dosage, the concentration of the medication in the feed. What we were shooting for actually is to make the feed as high and as concentrated an antibiotic as possible in case the fish would not be eating very well. So if we're usually eating 3% of their body weight, when they were sick, they were only consuming 1% of the body weight, they would still get enough medication into them to be therapeutic and to stop the bacteria from growing. So we stored these 440 bags over time in the walk-in freezer. We were strict about requiring a VFD from the vet before we could sell it. And then we did a survey, and in our survey questions, we did it analytically with a Likert scale, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Strongly disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree, different rankings to the questions. And then on that right-hand column, the second from the bottom, institutional review board. Whenever you do research involving people, you have to have it approved with an IRB process, institutional review board, just to make sure that we're not violating people personally. That originated from some studies that were done in the 1940s where certain populations, African American populations were infected with syphilis, and then they ran experiments on that, and at that time it was I guess generally regarded as just okay, and obviously that kind of thing, that kind of human abuse has stopped now, and so we have an official IRB process to make sure that human subjects aren't violated like that. So that last bullet, whenever we administer or recommend medicated feed and we sell it to the farmer and they feed the feed and they tell us the results, and you'll see later in this talk the results were really good from feeding the medicated feed. We would oftentimes visit the farm and just observe things firsthand and communicate with the farmer. And those farm visits, as well as surveys that we would talk to the farmer, we would find out information for this study, but in the process you find out so much more information. So just communicating and interacting with the stakeholders on a daily basis is so important to get information, and all of you in Extension out there understand that concept. So the information that you all provide us during our day-to-day discussions is very valuable, and it helps direct our research in a positive way. So we would culture the bacteria for 24 to 48 hours on a culture plate like the one on the left there. And then once we would get an isolate, a day or two later, usually a day later, we could identify it in a Vitek machine, and it would say what kind of bacteria it was. It's interesting. The Vitek machines are vacuum. They work in a vacuum. They were designed for the space station, so that when astronauts get, well, I think it was common it probably is common for astronauts to get UTI infections, I guess because of the sanitation practices that have to occur in outer space. So they needed a way to identify the bacteria, in space, so they came up with this Vitek machine, and we have one in our lab. So for human bacteria, it also does antibiotic susceptibility. So in the Vitek machine, it will say, well, it's Aeromonas bacteria, and you can use erythromycin or whatever to treat it, and it should work. So then you have your answer. With fish, we have to go in and manually isolate the bacteria and run an antibiotic susceptibility, because with the fish pathogens and the fish antibiotics, it's not in the advanced database for the Vitek. So in this next slide here, we would culture the bacteria. Let's suppose your fish had Aeromonas, and we would culture it on this plate. And each of these discs has an antibiotic in it. And you can see the bottom two there, the antibiotic wouldn't work because the bacteria just grows right up to the disc. The top two have a zone of inhibition around the disc, so the bacteria can't grow up to that disc. So that antibiotic, if it's put in feed, will stop the bacteria from growing. In order to get a VFD, a veterinary feed directive, like the fancy word for prescription from the vet, there has to be a valid veterinary client-patient relationship. So it can't just be some random vet that you telephone and get a VFD. That vet has to be familiar with yourself, with your fish. So, the vet, the client, which is us, stakeholders, the patient, which is the fish. There has to be a valid relationship there. And then the second bullet there is interesting, I think. Our disease lab will help the veterinarian. We'll tell the veterinarian, well, we isolated Aeromonas bacteria, and it's sensitive to Aquaculture medicated feed. We suggest that you could prescribe or write a VFD for this concentration in the feed for this many days with X number of withdrawal days. So basically, the veterinarian's not trained in fish diseases, and we are. So and legally, they're the ones that can do the prescription of the VFD. So we kind of work together to get to comply with the law and to help the farmers. This is an Aquaculture VFD form. It just has the place for the client, a place for the veterinarian, and their address. And then this is just the top of the form. The column there at the bottom goes into different types of antibiotics for different types of fish species and different concentrations. And then basically the veterinarian will make the recommendation on a sheet similar to that. So basically the way the medicated feed was made is we were using either terramycin or Aquaculture. I have to check my time here. So the feed was made in Idaho or Utah, and right when it was freshly made and kind of soft, it would be subjected to vacuum coating. It would go into a vacuum, and then the antibiotic would be introduced into the system, and the medication would kind of enter into the feed through the pores of the feed in the vacuum environment, making it a little bit less likely that the antibiotic would be able to leach out of the feed once it hit the water. So we kind of like that process. And here on the right, you see the medicated feed stacked up and stored in a walk-in freezer so it can be accessible, readily accessible to the fish farming stakeholders whenever they needed it. Figure on the right there is one of our growers that came, to pick up the feed and take back to his farm to feed the largemouth bass. Most of our surveys were done by telephone, the second bullet there. We did some data collection in surveys from emails, but most of it was during telephone conversations. The duration of the study was from July of 2023 through March of 2025, so it was a pretty long period of time. And as I mentioned, we learned a lot of information in addition to the surveys. So some of the survey questions. When an internal bacteria infection was diagnosed and medicated feed was recommended and readily available, I chose to treat with, so this is a farmer answering this question. You can see there a huge majority of the feed, 92% chose yes, they would choose the medicated feed. 3% chose management. Maybe they thought, well, we'll just simply feed less feed, maybe subject the fish to less stress. 3% used copper sulfate. They thought, well, I'll just use copper sulfate. And then 2% just chose to use salt. So there are other options that farmers can choose, but most everyone was on board with the project, and they participated and wanted to use the medicated feed. Another question, having the medicated feed readily available at KSU influenced my decision to use that recommended treatment. So here you have virtually everyone, the purple there, 84% said very strongly, 8% in the blue there strongly, and then moderately, 8% answered moderately, the green section there. So basically, people in general, were comfortable with using the medicated feed and supported the project. I guess maybe I'll introduce this concept now that we were using USDA money and spending a lot of money buying this feed, so we felt like we wanted to justify using that money to buy medicated feed. So if the farmers, did not support it and didn't buy the feed, then we would not in the future spend money, USDA money to buy the feed. So our results basically were showing that, that spending the USDA money was extremely justified, that the industry supported it widely and enthusiastically. So we were real pleased with the results. Third question, I plan to mix or top coat medication with the feed that I have at my farm when my fish are diagnosed with internal bacteria after obtaining a VFD from my veterinarian. So this is, most people strongly disagree with this, that they did not want to take the the regular feed that they have and mix it with a powder and oil, like vegetable oil and the powder, and put it in like a cement mixer, for example, mix it up themselves and feed it to the fish. They would prefer to buy it already made from the feed mill, which to me it seems kind of like obvious type of thing. But there were some 16%, 5% actually strongly, 5% agreed that they would prefer to actually mix the medicated feed themselves. So their reasoning was that it was cheaper that way. They could use the feed that they already had on the farm, and they could just mix it up themselves and feed it to the fish. So some people did prefer that route, but most everyone liked to buy the medicated feed already made. This, for the sake of time, I'll skip this slide. It's not that crucial. And basically, this slide shows that people thought that the cost of medicated feed was well worth it. This next slide, I think, kind of illustrates this point even better. That middle column there, medicated feed value. So our farmers spent in between like $17,000 and $20,000 on medicated feed during this study. And when you tabulate the value of the fish on all their farms, it added up to about $2 million. So basically, farmers were spending about $20,000 to protect like $2 million worth of assets, because if you don't control the disease, who knows, it could spread from pond to pond. So they were proactive. They spent the $20,000 among all these farmers here. And some of these farmers used the feed multiple times, so that's why the number of farmers isn't as high as in our study itself. So basically, what was that? 1%? They spent 1% of the value of the fish in their ponds to protect the other 99%. And most people plan to use medicated feed in the future whenever, especially if we have it available here at Kentucky State University. Basically for the, I'll try to go through these quickly. We're kind of running short on time here. So this kind of, I guess, summarizes what we were saying before, that first bullet there, that farmers, in a previous study, we found that farmers tended to not buy medicated feed because it wasn't available here in a reasonable amount of time and for a reasonable cost. So this study showed that, basically, if it's available, farmers will buy it and they prefer to use it. And the middle bullet there, we actually were complimented by a lot of farmers in our ability to help them obtain a VFD from the veterinarian. The last bullet there, the medicated feed was effective. So before medicated feed was fed, on average, each farmer that used the medicated feed was losing about 873 fish. And then after the treatment, they were only losing 24 fish. So it reduced the mortalities significantly, illustrating that the medicated feed was effective. I should point out, too, that this is translational research where you're working with the real industry, and you're not able to do replicated ponds. You can't say, well, okay, your ponds, well, I'm not going to give you medicated feed, and we're going to compare it with her ponds. So we can't really do comparison like that. So that limits us a little bit in some of our conclusions. So I think the top bullet there, it seems like the conclusion in general is that the medicated feed that needs to be available is the trout feed or the bass feed, the high protein feed that tends to come from out west, Idaho, for example. And that feed needs to be the feed that's stored here. If the farmers are using catfish feed, and they can go to one of the catfish feed mills that is within drivable distance, they can go get their feed here in the eastern U.S. So I don't think we need to carry the catfish medicated feed, but we probably do need to carry the bass and trout medicated feed for in the future. So that's kind of the direction. That kind of summarizes these bullets here. Let's see, I just try to pick out the most. So the next to last bullet there, more disease preventive approaches are encouraged, such as use of autogenous vaccines and feed ingredients to prevent diseases, including probiotics. I didn't use the word autogenous vaccine before. During this study, one of our farmers allowed us to take the bacteria from his fish and send it to a lab in Maine, and the lab in Maine made a vaccine that's customized, autogenous vaccine that's specifically for that bacteria for that farm. And so the company in Maine made the vaccine, and then in the future, after they made that farmer was receiving fingerling bass to stock in his ponds that had been vaccinated already. So that process helped to reduce the need for using medicated feed. So I think that's a positive thing. And I feel happy that we were able to isolate that bacteria, send it to the lab in Maine, and then work with that lab in Maine that made the vaccine for the fish. Okay, so there's some limitations here. I mentioned we got the feed from Skretting. Skretting was making the feed in Utah. They left the United States. They're now making the feed in Canada. So and then there's also another company, Bio Oregon, that makes feed as well. And so we're just wondering how, with tariffs involved and everything, if maybe the tariffs being in place could encourage Skretting to go back to making feed in the United States to reduce that tariff. So I don't know how that's going to pan out. We'll just have to see. Rangan is another option. They're a little bit more expensive than the Skretting, but they are domestic, and they're contracted with us right now to provide medicated feed for us in the future. So from this point on, we'll probably be working with Rangan to provide medicated feed for farmers that need it, and Skretting did a great job working with us in the past. Okay, and I mentioned this already about the vaccination. It was against the bacteria Edwardziella piscicida, and that's the one that we sent up to the Kennebec lab in Maine, and then they made the autogenous vaccine for the bass for what we sent them. Okay, so we'll acknowledge the USDA for their funding for this project, and here we have the team shown that worked with Tola, our graduate student, on this project. And if there's time for any questions. Yeah, yes. Fred, go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, Altec in Nicholasville? Yeah. Well, I think they never did have medicated feed, but they did make probiotic feed, and now they kind of have shifted more focus towards Europe through Copens. Copens is a big company in I can't remember what maybe in several countries in Europe. So they're collaborating with Copens there. That might be more of the Altec branch in Europe. So they're not really immersed in that right now in the U.S. as far as I know. Not for me personally. There may have been some researchers that were buying. Did y'all buy Altec feed ever for your projects? Or? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Right. So, yeah, so basically we just have to kind of work around the fact that they're not here. Just like with Skretting not being readily available, we have to kind of work around that too. So, yeah, it's a young industry. It's growing, and so we need to be malleable and to be able to work with different companies in different ways. Yeah. Well, no, actually, the way that works is we do everything in-house for isolating the bacteria, identifying it, and running antibiotic susceptibilities. The only thing we interact with the veterinarian for is to get that VFD. And the VFD, there's oftentimes, there has to be some kind of a charge from the veterinarian to the farmer for providing a VFD, because it's the veterinarian's time and expertise that has to be paid for. So basically, whenever we did have a veterinarian here that worked, in the land grant program, in the College of Ag, they never really did that role because they would not want to compete, be a competitor with the private veterinarian. So so the veterinarians are, they don't really encroach on each other's territory. We're here to help private industry make money, not to compete against them, so. Yeah, right, yeah, and they just respect that, they don't want to do the, in fact, I know, there is a little bit of a factor with that too, because, Kennebec that make the vaccine also does diagnostics like we do, except it'd be very expensive to get them to do routine diagnostics that we do for free. So technically we're kind of competing against them, but the industry is so young and new, and people aren't making a huge profit to begin with they can't really spend $3,000 to a private lab to do a disease case when maybe they're making $10,000 a year profit on their pond, for example. So they don't want to, it's too expensive to use the private. So that's where we come in. Yes. It's a very, very practical, applied type of thing where, we try to help our stakeholders in a real tangible kind of way. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. Yeah. Do you live pretty close to here? Well, yeah, you could put them in a plastic bag, and the live ones even, and just bring them to our lab. We could diagnose them for you. Channel catfish in indoor culture has not really worked that great. Tilapia seems to be a really nice indoor culture fish. That works well. Marine shrimp is working real well. Flounder, it looks like it's working well too. So certain species of fish you might see as being compatible. Oh, okay, yeah, we could talk to you about the specifics there. Okay. Well, we'll contact Dr. Ray, and maybe you might be interested in some marine shrimp or flounder to try to see, or maybe tilapia, would be some good possibilities, I think, for indoor aquaculture. They're pretty tough. They're pretty tough fish. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier about interacting amongst each other. That professor right there, Dr. Novello, he was part of a team that developed a tilapia that grows 70% faster or something. It's like it's a fast growing tilapia. It's not GMO. It's not genetically modified. It's just done through breeding of advanced strains, and so yeah, that would be a good one to raise if you're going to do tilapia. If it grows faster, it can make you more money more quickly. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Before our next speaker comes, I just wanted to make a correction on my announcement. Everybody know this month is different with the days, how they fell. Normally, we have our third Thursday, and then we have the fourth Wednesday. But I told everybody next Wednesday. It's not next Wednesday. It's actually, if you look at the date, it's not next Wednesday, it's the Wednesday after that, okay? So not this Wednesday coming. It's the following Wednesday. Because if you look at your calendar, we're at the third Thursday. And next Wednesday is the third Wednesday. Okay, so this month is a little awkward, okay? So please, I'm sorry about that. Now we will have our next speaker, Hameen. Mr. Amin Havasti. Let's give our undivided attention to him. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hamid Marwasi, Dr. Dobrov's associate. First of all, thank you for Dr. Dobrov's for nice introducing, and his slides makes my presentation easier and faster. As Dr. Dobrov explained, we have a fish disease lab at KSU in Aquaculture Research Center. And I decided to explain what we are doing and how we could help fish farmers in this lab. But before that, what do you think when you are talking about fish diseases? Is that just bacteria? Is that bad management? Any situation that put fish in danger, that treat their health, and can affect on your production could be disease. Sometimes it refers to bacteria, viral, fungal, parasitic, or sometimes it's because of bad management, malnutrition, or water quality that is not good for fish. High temperature, low temperature, all these things can affect on the fish health situation and make them sick. You see that there is some bacterial infection, fungus, some worms, some parasites on the gills and skin. In general, there are 4 groups of biological agents: parasitic, viral, bacterial, and fungal can affect and make your fish sick. But remember that there's some other issues like everything that decreases the water quality or malnutrition or bad feed can affect on your fishes as well. But why it's very important to know about the fish disease? Remember that in general, treatment of sick fish is not impossible, but sometimes it's very hard to do. And when the fish are getting sick, normally they lost their appetite, and it's very hard to feed them or add antibiotic to the feed, and it's very hard to treat them in this case. According to the global economic laws, in 2024, it was $10 billion economic loss during the disease in the whole world. So it's very important to know about the disease and treat them. Like I said, it's not always a biological agent or biological causative agent to make your fish sick. It could be a poor diet, or it could be bad feeding or underfeeding. Overfeeding sometimes can affect your fish health. On the other hand, we have some environmental stressor, poor water quality, mostly ammonia and nitrate, pH levels, dissolved oxygen, very important to have a good healthy fish, and sometimes overcrowding is very important. Common infection disease that you can see in fish could be ulcer, lesions, cuts that you see on the skin, sometimes on eyes, gills, some mixed combination of bacterial and fungal disease, and fin rot, very common in fish that mostly happen by bacteria or fungus. Well, it's not working anymore. Oh. The other group that can affect your fish health could be virus, very dangerous, that normally will kill 90% of your fish in your farm. And it could be also parasites like Ichthyophthirius or fish lice that you can see the effects on this is egg, and this is a fish infected by egg or worms, different types of parasites that can affect. Fungus is the other causative agent of fish diseases, mostly Sapropelagnia that can cover the skin and gills of the fish. Sometimes very lethal and kills up to 50% of the fish. Sometimes they can kill up to 80% of the eggs. So it's very important to recognize the disease because, like I said, it's sometimes very different, very difficult to treat the fish. You have to be observant to find the early symptoms that you can see in your fish. Loss of appetite, lethargy, any bad swimming pattern, flashing, any kind of lesions, cuts, bleeding, any type of spots, black, yellow, white, can be showing the disease on your fish. Gasping at the surface is another symptom that can help you that is something wrong in the water quality. And sometimes it's just you have lots of mucus that is just hanging on the fish. Sometimes feces is just changing the color or shape. So what we are doing at Fish Disease Lab is generally in two parts: water quality test and check for parasites or bacteria. We don't have to do anything on viruses at this time. Normally, when the fish is coming to the lab, we are starting for a necropsy of the fish to see what's wrong with the external part of fish or internal part. We got some samples from the skin, from the gills, and also inside the body. We get some wet mount from the skin and gills, and sorry, the device is not working very well. Oh. And then we check the slice that we got from the gills and the skin under the microscope to see if there's any parasites on the skin. At the same time, next step is to get some bacteriological sampling from the internal organs. After we got the culture dose, normally we put them in the Vitek machine to identify the bacteria, and next step is to do the sensitivity test to see if any of those bacteria, antibiotics that Dr. Durbov mentioned are effective on this bacteria. You see the sensitivity test that we done according to whatever that result says, then we select the antibiotic that is suitable for this disease. And then the farmer can come to the lab and take the antibiotic. Some samples of gill parasites and skin parasites that normally we saw in the fish that refer to the our lab. Some monogenes and trichodina. Let's see. Oh. Fresh amount of monogen isolated from the gills. I apologize, but the device is not working. Next slide, please, if you can. Next. The other service that we do in combination with Dr. Novellos is checking the sex maturity at the fish, so then we can compare it, if the fish are mature and without killing fish or getting internal sampling from the gonals, then we can recognize that they are male or female, are they mature or not yet. The other service that our lab will offer is farm visiting and consulting. We are going to the farms, getting samples from the fish that they have, identify the disease or explain about that, how they can treat or use different antibiotic or medicated feed. As Dr. Dobro said, we have on the freezer. Thank you. And they can just get according to the sensitivity test. The most important thing is that some of these disease that fish got are zoonosis. Zoonosis is a disease that common between human and fish. So not only the fish health is important for us, the human health is important as well. So we have to be careful about that. And the last, but not at the least, the fish disease case database that this data collected over 25 years and transferred from the paper to the computer. So by looking at the, this database, we can find when, where, which kind of fish we had, which kind of pathogen isolated from this farm. And all this done by Dr. Dorborov. Thank you so much. No question? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
So let's give Dr. Amin another hand. Next, we have Mr. Mason Crawford. He will be talking with us about farm to cafeteria aquaponic demo project, thrives at Kentucky FFA Leadership Training Center. At this time, let's give Mr. Crawford our undivided attention.
Thank you. Glad to be here today. Do a lot of presentations around the state on various topics, but aquaponics is one that is old and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to look for the clicker. Here it is. So without further ado, we're going to get started. I always hate being the hindrance between you and lunch, but that's the way the schedule falls today. So I'm going to do my best to keep you guys somewhat entertained, but also share some important information. This presentation is going to be slightly less analytical than some of the other programs or presentations, but nonetheless, while it may be less into the chemical, physical sciences, it is important about the social dynamics that KSU plays out in the community, as well as exposing students to some of those other areas of science. So my history is that of what I would call an early adopter. Even back in my college days, I was interested in the sustainability of agriculture and took some of the early classes in that. When I started teaching in the early 90s in the secondary schools and high schools, introduced into the schools some aquaponics and aquaculture systems. And if you think back, that was some of the early adaptations of that. I'm pleased to say that one system in LaRue County that was put in the early 90s is actually still in production today. So sometimes that's a great testament when things can continue and prove themselves over time. So at FFA camp, that's where we're talking about today. That's I like to poll the audience sometimes whenever we're speaking. So anybody take agricultural education in high school? Anybody out in the group? All right, I see some hands going up. FFA, or formerly known as Future Farmers of America, that is the extracurricular, or rather the intracurricular portion, club orientation for that group. So it's a great time that students get to expand what they do in the classroom out into the communities. FFA Camp is a 6-week program in Breckinridge County where the leaders in those organizations go and refine their skills and serve their communities in the school year. So FFA Camp has a bit of a storied history of inclusion of aquaculture. Back in the early days of camp, the kids actually went fishing a lot. There was a lake on the premises that was in much better condition than it is today. So kids would actually fish and use those in their consumption. But in 1994, there was a new administrative building put in, and I can remember as an early teacher that there was an aquaculture containment system, a recirculating system that was put in at that point. It was with marginal success, and after a few years, it kind of went out of favor. When I came into Cooperative Extension in 2016, that was one of the missions that I wanted to see was FFA Camp re-implement that system. It took a few years for that opportunity to present itself, but when it did, that was one of my goals. So beginning in 2019, I secured some funding, and this was a joint KSU venture utilizing the small farm grant money that is operated through the tobacco settlement and the ag development funds, and to buy the system that is used there. So we can do a lot with that. It took a few years because if you think back to those great years between 2020 and 2022, whenever we didn't get to go out into the communities like we like to in Extension. So it was on up into 2023 whenever we were able to get the system fully operational. And it is a great example of something called Train the Trainer. Not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's where as Extension personnel, we go out into the community and we train someone else who has the day-to-day interactions. Because of the limitations of travel, it was difficult for me to go 5 days a week for 6 weeks and present on this, but by working with the staff members at FFA camp, we were able to expose every single student that went to that camp, and that's about 1,500 kids a year. This thing is really sensitive. So farm to school is the model that was being used for this, and that is an example of schools that are in current trends are utilizing produce or meat that is grown locally. I know we have some producers out in the audience today that are involved with that. It's a great to get things healthier for the students. We all know that fresh foods are better, but this is an example at FFA camp where the students are actually growing. So the farm is the camp and the cafeteria is the food service part of the facility there. So it is an in-house farm to cafeteria model. So you may wonder, how much do we actually spend on school lunches? And it is pretty exorbitant for the state of Kentucky. There are $6 million that is spent just on the school lunches and the milk program. The camp meal is a significant part of the operating expenses for the 250 campers that are there each week. And so while our small demonstration system is not going to offset that budget, it does set the concept of growing for oneself. And it can be done on larger systems. One of the schools that I work with in LaRue County actually has quite a significant aquaponics system, and they sell their products through or serve their products through the school cafeteria. So the salad bar is an important feature that was put in at camp several years ago. You can imagine you got 250 teenagers there, and teenagers like to do what? They like to eat, right? So the standard meal that meets all of their nutritional needs is not probably going to leave those kids happy and full. So salad bars are used as that filler. And if we can grow the products on site there and allow the kids to harvest those and serve them on the meals, it's a good supplement to what they're doing. But the main thing is we're trying to do this in a way that encourages them to take this technology back to their schools. And that system is, in just 2 years, is already happening. I'm getting calls from schools all over the state trying to implement this into their agricultural education. Just this year, we started getting some exposure down in Graves County. And you know, Mayfield is pretty far west, and KSU doesn't have a great footprint when you get west of, Louisville area. So if we can get our foot in the door, that's great. So we are supplementing this salad bar. It's a symbolic thing, but it is also a practical transition to the next step. So I'm not going to go in great depth and steal the thunder for some of the afternoon programming. So aquaponics, just so you're keeping up with where we're going with this, it's a combination of raising fish in water and then raising the plants using the waste material from the fish to fuel those plants, so to speak. And it requires some biofiltration we'll talk a little bit about, but again, I'm not trying to steal the thunder from the specialist in that area. So there are a lot of benefits. The main thing has to do with reduction of surface area or land mass that's required, more efficient use of our water, up to 80% better use of water. So there's a lot of benefits to aquaculture. I'm going to focus less on that in this presentation and share more about what the benefits are. Give me just a second. We'll go ahead and keep talking. I'm going to talk about the benefits of aquaculture as it is at FFA camp. So there are some great benefits. It gives KSU exposure to a whole new audience because the fact that it just hasn't been a lot of KSU engagement with some of the high schools. We have some great programs that are going. Dr. Thompson is out into the schools. Janelle works with them. Chelsea Walling does a great job. So there is a lot, but there is a big part of the state to cover, and we just don't have the manpower out in the counties to do that at this point. The nice thing about FFA camp is those kids come from every county in the state. So we get exposure to every county. Now, it may be a limited number of students, but those are the leaders in that youth organization. And if we can get them on board, get their teachers on board, KSU gets a footprint in a lot of doors with this one project. So it allows for other programs to be taught at camp. For example, the Breckinridge County Ag Expo is where all the sixth graders in the county come to the FFA facility. And for the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to present about aquaponics and other concepts like direct marketing to all of those sixth graders. So that's just one more use of a one-time investment in equipment that is reaching an additional 250 kids a year. So I think that's a great thing. So out of the 2.5 years of this project, there's been over 3,600 students that have had direct interaction with this. There's another 1,500 to 1,600 that are slated to see this system and learn about it in just the summer period this year. So here's an overview of what the system looks like, and it goes through all the concepts of the fish production, the plant production, the biofiltration that occurs in the middle. But the real part is what are the benefits to the students, because we know this from schools that we've been to. We try to remember the content that we receive, but we always remember how people treat us and the experience that we have. This is an example of the experience that you can get. The kids learn about STEM indirectly. They're going to take some of those concepts home with them, and it's going to improve test scores. But the big thing is we're helping them to see science, technology, engineering, math in real-world applications. So the biofiltration and the nitrogen cycle, it's just a great way to cover and go over how real science occurs in a contained system. They're going to learn about pH and life cycles. But this has a great example to expand aquaponics education out into the schools. So this is actually an example of a system that was put in even before the FFA camp, but it's the same principles that are going to apply. This is down in Logan County at Russellville Independent High School. It's a very low-income inner-city school, and it's actually through their biology program, not through an ag class, because of being a small school, they don't even have an ag program. But they are using agricultural topics and have actually created standalone aquaculture classes. So it's a great thing that can be done. Of course, all of the different areas of science related to aquaculture have applications. Here we have a middle school program. FFA camp has 6 weeks that are for just FFA members. 5 of those are for high school, but 1 week is dedicated to our middle school programs. The unique thing about a lot of middle school education in Kentucky is many of the schools that are expanding into middle school FFA programs are doing it in our more urban areas. And that exposes a lot of students to agriculture for the first time. And that is a great part of how aquaculture, because it has some urban applications, because of that space utilization, that water conservation, the fact that it is fresh produce being grown in areas that otherwise would not have it. I'll be honest, I harvested some lettuce out of this very system about 4 weeks ago. And it's been kept in the refrigerator, but it is still edible. How many times can you go and buy lettuce at the grocery store and keep it for more than 2 weeks without it going bad? So it is a superior product, and that is something that our middle schoolers in urban areas are getting an opportunity to see. Now, this was an example of 2023, so we had tilapia. You've heard about tilapia a few times in a couple of different presentations, and it's a great food fish. It works out well for this because the fish are in a greenhouse. We do supplement a little bit with a heater during the early part of the year, but then during the summer, the greenhouse stays to that ideal optimal temperature. So tilapia are great to have. And then at the end of the year, there can actually be a fish harvest, and the staff members, the camp directors and counselors, they all get to, participate in that. So it's one extra benefit to having an aquaponics educational demonstration project. I kind of throw a little shout out to Josh Mitchum, who is the camp director. He has been very on board with this type of project. And he is the one who said every camper that comes to camp needs to learn about this. So he revised the curriculum a few years ago where all the kids that attend do the same amount of programming, the same topics. And they included the aquaponics demonstration in one of those workshops. Now, the workshop changes in its emphasis, but that just shows the versatility of this type of project. It can be on modern production techniques, or it can be on what the current trends are. So it is very adaptable. Also, the high school, 5 of the weeks are dedicated to our high school students, so there is a lot that goes into play. This past summer in 2024, you'll notice those fish look a little bit different. Those are the koi. So we didn't have to use the heater that year because the koi are a little bit more of a cold-tolerant fish. But this is another example for those few students who are 2-year campers. They get a chance to see a different product. So we know tilapia are raised for meat, whereas the koi are more for ornamental purposes. So you can talk about the economic impact, the economic model of the two. Koi are worth more per fish than tilapia. They're not a great food fish, so we're not going to use those in our food, but we're going to have fish that are worth high dollars per fish. So that introduces the ornamental market concept to the lessons that are being taught. So it's just a lot of versatility. Of course, the lettuce are seen there, and that's the main product that's going to be produced, but we do experiment, and for demonstration purposes, we'll have some cherry tomatoes, we'll have various other leafy greens and that type of thing. There's 2 different types of systems that are laid out. We've got the float trays, like we have there. It's going to be your deep water cultures. And then in one of the earlier pictures, there were the clay pebbles. The interesting thing about that, they serve as a medium for the plants, but they also serve for the biofiltration. So the Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, those are 2 beneficial bacteria that help that nitrogen cycle, getting that harmful ammonia. We've all been around various animals that we've been cleaning up after, and the ammonia is not a pleasant thing to be around. But if you can get it into the nitrate form, which is the 3rd phase of that, we know plants like that, right? That's what we're going to fertilize the plants with. Now, the nice thing about working with a train-the-trainer model, which you can see on that far right picture, the young lady that is very animated there, she was a UK student, loved to get a KSU student there at some point, but we do have agriculture students that are studying agriculture in college, are most of the staff members there, and kids listen to kids. I can go in and talk to them, and they'll be polite, but if you put someone who's closer to their peer range doing the lessons, they pay more attention. And that's a great thing because I've had the privilege over the last 2 years to work with 2 wonderful college students that learned more about aquaculture in 2 visits than most high school students get the opportunity out of 4 years. So, and they have the ability to entertain and engage the student population and teach them about concepts. And that's what she's doing in that picture there. So here's just some of the produce that is contributing to the salad bar. Got our leafy greens. You'll see some of the additional plants in the middle picture. And that is a kind of a full version picture of the stock tank, the culture tank that has the fish in it, as well as the system. Now this is an atrium style greenhouse, so you do get some shading from one side, but KSU has done research on what is the most economical version of lighting. We know that the full spectrum plant growth lights are the best, but we also know if you've ever been to Lowe's and tried to buy some, they're extremely pricey. So there's been some research done on what is the most efficient. Where does that economic threshold occur? And just your simple LED lighting can provide adequate growth. So we have supplemented with some just basic LED lighting, and it helps to defer some of that shading effect that occurs in a lean-to style greenhouse. So again, it's just putting applications of the types of research that occur at KSU, putting it in real-world applications and seeing the results from it. And we share that with the kids, so it just gets more acknowledgement of the work that KSU does to the brightest minds in high school agriculture. So it also provides some opportunities for expansion. This is a system that was at the Kentucky State Fair in 2023. So it was our second year of having a big aquaculture system, and the year prior, the system that is FFA Camp was actually transported and put into KSU's booth. This is one I got to give a shout out to Janelle Hager. This is based on a design that she has and helped with the construction of. While I'm on that topic, I do want to share credit for this demonstration system to several members, too many names to mention, on the aquaculture team for bringing fish out, for assisting when and if we have any of the health issues that have been discussed in earlier presentations, so that we have a successful demonstration project. But the State Fair has been a great platform for these aquaculture exposures, and this system, or one like this, made from IBC totes, the industrial bulk type containers, then they have an opportunity to be a very affordable version. And that's another thing that we like to share with the students. It doesn't have to be a $12,000 prefab system. It can be a $1,000 homemade system if it's designed right and meets those proper techniques. So every presentation that in extension that we do, I'd like to put the non-discrimination statement in there just to share that we serve all audiences. We tend to cater to our small-scale farmers, and I love that because we relate to that situation. So many of us that are in this know how it is to juggle public work with small-time farm work, or try to make it in a big world on limited acres. And so, but we never exclude anyone from the table, so to speak. So my contact information is here. I have some of my cards on me as well, so I'd love to see you during lunch or in the afternoon. But I tried to leave a few minutes for questions and answers. So if you have any questions about the FFA project in general, or even in specifics, I'd love to address those for you. Or turn it over to Edwin to get us ready for lunch. So thank you all very much for your attention, and I'll be available this afternoon.
Thank you again, Mr. Crawford. Now we're going to break for our lunch. I would ask that you file out through the back of the room here and make a left and come back and get your lunch. Now, I would ask that you either get a salad or a sandwich, okay? And then you can come back in here and enjoy your meal. So enjoy your meal, and we're going to start back at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Work work with Dr. Durbrow in the disease lab. We do a lot of disease diagnostics, of course, water quality, pond management, things like that. And then somehow I got roped into doing an aquaponics boot camp. So I'm presenting today, but I'm collaborating with Janelle Hager, our state aquaponics specialist, as well as Chelsea Walling, another extension research associate. All right, so Appalachia currently spans around 26.4 million people and about 200,000 miles. You can see eastern Kentucky is commonly considered as like a low income or an area of food insecurity, which is defined as a household level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. That's defined by the USDA. Historically high poverty rates for rural populations of these regions have a direct correlation with economic, education, and health disparities. So, in a way to combat that or mitigate these issues, starting aquaponics can be a low-cost way to raise sustainable, healthy food for these communities. So some challenges that new farmers commonly have with any agriculture, aquaponics, especially aquaculture endeavor that they want to start is the lack of shared knowledge and educational resources. As well, new farmers can be particularly susceptible to unreliable sources and misinformation. If you Google, what are my symptoms on, any Google or search engine, probably tells you have cancer. So you can imagine there's probably all kinds of misinformation out there that's really easy to find. And sometimes they can take that and run with it, and it probably isn't very good. So with limited training opportunities in aquaponics, it's important for us to provide relevant, timely, and credible educational resources to improve grower success. So that's where the role of aquaponics extension comes in with Kentucky State particularly. You can see in this table the currently used resources are internet and videos, predominantly with hobbyists, producers, and educators. However, the desired resources are number one, other growers, and then extension agents, as well as classes and workshops. So the role of extension is to provide accurate, accessible, and applied information to our aquaponics stakeholders and to provide support sustainable aquaponics and increase industry growth and success. Sorry. And like I said, other growers are the number one wanted resource for these people trying to get into this. So this is where Aquaponics Bootcamp comes in to try and create that networking opportunity, as well as just a class where they can connect with other growers as well as extension professionals. We are collaborating with two other schools or organizations, the Ohio State University, as well as Blue Acre Appalachian Aquaponics, that's out in West Virginia. So the ABC3 Aquaponics Bootcamp is supposed to be a 3-year collaboration event with Ohio State and West Virginia. We are doing the first year here at Kentucky State, and then Ohio will do one next year, and then West Virginia will do one the year after that. This training is offered for free with land grant extension funds. Lunch, we will provide lunch to all the participants, and then they are responsible for travel and lodging. To come to Frankfurt, if they're coming from anywhere over like hour away, or they want to stay the night before the class, whatnot, they will have to pay for their lodging and travel and things like that. So it's going to be 12 modules, one per month, on the third Saturday for a year. Our first class is actually this Saturday, so if you know anybody that wants to join, it's a bit late notice, but we can probably accommodate for you. We have a few open spots, or if you want to join anytime throughout the year, just let me know. We have a few schedules flying around here. And the modules have been planned to coincide with seasonal farm duties, so right here in the summer period is typically the busiest for farmers, so we're trying to get the main basic topics right off the bat, farm planning, growth, broodstock, feeding, things like that. And there will be 3 levels of intensity for this. So at the top level, the most intensive is if you come to the most classes, you'll get the most intensive training, of course, in-depth involvement, year-long immersive hands-on training and mentoring. You have to attend at least 6 in-person classes to receive a certificate. The intermediate, of course, mid-level involvement, a variety of different learning activities, and then introductory. So General level involvement, you'll basically just kind of get, grow that network of stakeholders to yourself, those other growers to get information from. We'll also be taking surveys by participants at previous ABC events. These were used to modify and develop the curriculum and align with the participant feedback of what they want to know, things that they might need a little bit of help on, certain topics, trying to cater the class as much as we can to just be as helpful as possible. All right, so the knowledge and skills necessary for operating successful aquaponics and venture can be gained through immersive educational training, which is what we're trying to provide with our Aquaponics Extension Bootcamp. These workshops combine classroom lessons, virtual curriculums, and hands-on activities. So they're actually going to be building systems themselves. They're going to be learning about what it takes to build a system, all the calculations that you need, and we'll be there to help them, of course, just asking questions and kind of just be a helping hand in any way that we can. So this creates that multifaceted learning environment. So they go into the business with confidence, and we can be able to troubleshoot. There'll be our contact information. 2 months down the line, their system goes down. They can always reach back out to us, and of course, we're there to help them. So to start going into some classes that we're going to cover, the most important, of course, is farm planning and marketing. Where are you going to have your farm? Do you have enough electricity, running water? What all does it take? Are you going to keep good records? How are you going to sell the fish and products that you produce? Are you just building a small operation for yourself and your family? Do you want to sell just to your neighbors? Or do you want to grow food for local schools? Do you want to be a major provider in the county or surrounding counties? Just things like that. And then integrating aquaponics into existing farms. That's something that's very commonly done. If they already have the infrastructure there, it's kind of easier to integrate a smaller or large-scale aquaponics system into an already fully functioning farm. We'll also be covering harvesting, processing, food safety regulations, as well as any available certifications they can attain. Next, we're going to cover fish and plant health, of course. So what do you want to grow? Do you want to grow just lettuce, tomatoes, cabbage, things like that? Fish and plant selection. How are you going to feed your fish? What are you going to feed them? Where are you going to supply your fish? Where are you going to supply your seeds? Where are you going to get the fish from? All that kind of, the basics of aquaponics 101. Fingerling sourcing, reproduction, and stocking. Fish and plant health, disease and pest management, which is going to be a collaborative effort with everyone at Kentucky State, with spawning tilapia, the disease lab, of course, everybody else involved in aquaponics at Kentucky State, the Aquaculture Research Center. Then, of course, water quality and waste management. Keeping track of all the necessary water quality parameters, how are you going to test those, what instruments are you going to use, what's the cheapest, what's the most expensive, what's economically feasible for each farm. Biofiltration, nitrification, and waste management. So, of course, you feed the fish. You want to raise your lettuce with the waste from the fish, and how are you going to mitigate any excess or the mineralization and nitrification of the excess waste. And, of course, the mineralization of solid organic waste to increase biologically available nutrients. And that's something that Janelle and her team are working on a lot right now, is mineralization of the excess waste in the aquaponics, hydroponics systems to create ideal nutrient content of the water for the plants. And then, of course, we'll be doing some farm tours in and around Kentucky. So the first one, we're going to go down to Lexington to Food Chain. Some of you probably have been there or eaten there before. They have 7,000-gallon deep water culture aquaponics system currently right now. Their mission is to increase local access to fresh foods and engage with the community through education. They provide hundreds of meals per week of food safety processing and training in those areas. And then, of course, we'll go to everyone's favorite Kentucky cowboy, David Neville. He's in the back of the room there in the cowboy hat. He began as a traditional livestock farmer, but has adapted new technology like drones and vertical container farming. This is his facility. In these pictures, you can see a large deep water culture as well as the vertical system there. And he provides mostly leafy greens to local school systems in and around Henry County. And then another farm tour will actually be coming to the site. We're not going to go out there because it's all the way out in Benton, Kentucky, about 4 hours away. But West KY Aquaponics, they're established aquaponic company. They raise tilapia as well as lettuce. They're going to come talk to us about their marketing strategies, how they started, kind of give us like family, small business up to what they have now. They have an 8,000 square foot greenhouse. They have 6 500-gallon tilapia tanks. They mainly market on online and retail sales. I mean, you can just drive up, go inside, and buy fresh tilapia and lettuce right there. And yeah, like I said, Tammy's going to come. She's going to speak. She does a lot of consulting and marketing strategies for new growers. So she has a lot of resources and wealth of information for our participants. And she's going to come and share her industry expertise. So all the participants will be participating in hands-on system design and construction. We're going to build 5 systems. We're going to do 2 deep water culture, a nutrient film technique or NFT, a Dutch bucket system, as well as a media system. You can kind of see a basic layout of those systems on these photos. Kind of give the basic idea of what we're going to be doing with our participants. And then these are photos from a previous system design workshop that they did. However, this is basically what we'll be working on throughout the summer and throughout the year with all of our participants. So to assess how everybody's learning, what they want to learn, we're going to do pre and post surveys with all the participants. A little kind of like testing to see how their knowledge gained throughout the class. They'll give us lots of feedback throughout the year, and we'll of course record all of this data and then be able to share it with Ohio and West Virginia. But most importantly, the data that we collect will be shared with all the participants so they can when they start their system and they have any questions, they'll have all this information that they learned over the year, as well as, a huge network of farmers within Kentucky, as huge as it can be with our limited aquaponics resources we have here. But referring back to what we know is that they want to learn from other growers. So this is just the perfect opportunity for them to learn and get that industry experience. So, like I said, we have about 25 participants. If anybody has anybody that wants to join, you can talk to me or Lucian. He's right here in the black shirt. We have a table set up outside. We can most likely accommodate extra people throughout the year or to this first class that is Saturday. So by offering this program at different commitment levels, we hope to get a diverse perspective from hobbyist producers and educators. So somebody already has a system or they just want to learn more, or somebody wants to start from the ground up, hopefully we can accommodate their needs. We expect our participants to gain critical knowledge and confidence in their aquaponics adventures. And this is like just an informational flyer. Like I said, our first class is this Saturday. We'll start around 8:30 at the Aquaculture Research Center, right off KSU's campus. Probably plan to go all day around till 5 o'clock. And there's our contact information, and I'm happy to answer any questions everybody has. So I think we're going to have Dr. Simmons do his floating raceways for the small farm presentation now. Dr. Simmons has been a professor at the Aquaculture Research Center for how long? Decade. So a lot of industry experience coming from West Virginia into Kentucky State. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
You may have a pond. It probably has bass or bluegill in it, maybe some crabs. It may be a wee mess. Many ponds are. So, how can we use that pond? We don't think about managing our water like we do managing our land. You have a pasture, you have an idea of what you can use that pasture for. You'll have goats on it, you'll have good. Do I need this? Does this help? Is it on? Knock, knock. Are you getting anything? Okay. There we go. There we go. But we don't think of managing our water for a particular use. Now, you may simply want a place to go fishing. If you have grandkids, I'd love to take my grandkids fishing someday.
Not yet.
Not yet, yes. Well, I don't either. September, I hope. September, they tell us. Okay? Okay. Well, then even your children are probably no longer in school, I'm guessing. Still in school. All right. Well, you've got a busy household then. And it may be a fun thing to go fishing. Indeed. All right? You may simply want to grow a little bit of food if you like to eat fish. You might be wanting to do both. You might want to sell a few fish to your community, provide something to your community. Regardless, what do you do with this pond, and can you manage it for a particular purpose? The answer is yes, of course you can. And we're using a tool called floating raceways. There are other subjects that I'm not prepared to go too far on, but floating raceways for the small farm. And the idea is the pond normally can't be drained. If it's an NRCS pond, sometimes you don't want to drain it for fear of not being able to close the valve and fill it back up again. Generally, to harvest the fish, hook and line is one way. Trapping might be another way. But you're never really going to clean the pond out. You're never going to get them all back. So the idea of containing the animals in some fashion, and also containing them in a way that you have access, and whether it's harvesting the fish or feeding the fish or just understanding what's happening, observing. If you're a good farmer, you do a lot of observing. Every day you check your animals and you observe your animals or your crop or whatever. Let's see if we can get this to advance here. All right. One reason I'm here talking to you is the fact that we get support from USDA. And it's always wise, it's polite to acknowledge the support wherever you get it. We also get support from Kentucky State University. There's a program of distinction there, and you've probably heard other speakers mention that. Now this is an idea that was patented. This is from the patent. If you go look up a patent, this is what someone developed. They're calling it a floating fish cultivating system. And that's as recent as 1995. You've heard of cages before. Put fish in a cage. You may have heard of raceways before. If you go to a trout farm, you may hear of raceways, which is really just a concrete channel, and they divert water through it, and it becomes a place where they confine the fish and they can feed them. So really what I'm talking mostly about is an aquatic feedlot. The fish are confined. You put the fish in at a small size. You feed them, they grow to a large size. Hopefully it'll be a market size, and you'll have someone wanting to pay you for them, all right? Usually big enough to fillet or big enough to eat, that's another milestone. And this idea came from Ernest, it looks French. Does anyone know how to pronounce that? Calouet. Is that okay? All right. In 1995. So this is just a device to hold the animals, to provide water circulating through it, and then let's see if I can do this. Oh, that's what that does. This area would be to collect the solid waste, because fish produce waste too. You feed them. All right. We have a demonstration system down here in the pond. I'd be happy to show it to you if you want sometimes. It's a mess right now. We're making changes. Not all of the raceways are stocked, but we do have some fish down there, and I could show you. The concept is the same as the patent, if you will, and we're calling it a floating raceway. Okay, so you got the pond bank here and some way of accessing a raceway. And so the raceway, there you've got red on one end. That is to show a screen. Screens are at either end to retain the fish. And there is a directional flow of water through the raceway. You can put more fish in something like that than you can a cage, circulating the water through it. There are a variety of examples. This is from a poster from Scott Grabe down in Florida, and they have the raceways here, and they put a paddle wheel at the end, so they're pulling the water through. Whoops. Pulling the water through. He grew out about 42,000 tilapia fingerlings to 550 grams in 3, drawing water from a 67-acre impoundment. So there's an example of someone, and what year was that? 2002. Relatively recent, really. Here's another example from Australia, and you can see they have a set of raceways here and a main dock, and they're using bubbles to move the water, an airlift. So they have a diffuser down in the water, and as the bubbles rise, and if you contain that will allow you to move quite a volume of water. You don't lift the water, you just push it. Less energy. Here's another example from 2007 in Alabama. Actually, this was a catfish pond, and he was trying different things. And once again, the way of moving the water here, let's try this. Way of moving the water was paddle wheels. But you also see that little square thing, that's a feeder, automatically puts feed into the pond. Okay, here's another example in Toronto with trout in a quarry. So the concept is the same. It's been used by a variety of folks really around the world. And the features include For us, we're thinking ponds that won't be drained. Continuous flow helps provide the environment where the fish can grow, and it takes the waste out of the system and goes into the pond. So when you feed your fish, you are fertilizing the pond, but you're not growing the fish in your filth. All right? That may be a crude way of saying it, but that's just the way it is in farming sometimes. Fish can be grown at a high density. They're accessible. You can actually have dividers where you're separating sizes or even different kinds of fish. You can put covers on them to protect them from the predators. And from a labor standpoint, for the small farm, they're accessible. If you needed to get 100 pounds of fish up for an order, you could do it. If you had to seine a pond, you need a crew of people, a large seine, and that's just... And many times our small farms are really supplementary income, and this fits that profile. The pond itself is your treatment vessel. Unless you take the solid waste out, the pond itself is processing the waste load. And a floating raceway is not a permanent thing like a concrete raceway. A floating raceway can be taken out, can be sold to someone if someone wants to buy it. So it's not as a long-term investment as something that's permanent. So our focus is small farm, existing ponds, supplementary income, and using for fish personal or community use, possibly supporting a fee fishing or pay lake, perhaps even being a holding facility for someone who's catching fish from the wild, if you lived in the western part of the state and were fishing on the rivers. And what we have here on the Benson Research and Demonstration Farm is a pond that's not quite 2 acres. It's just down the hill. It's the one that has the docks in it. And average depth maybe around 5 feet. 10 acre feet roughly, that is, an acre foot is water that's 1 foot deep and covers an acre of area. So we figure about 10 acre feet. The pond has not been drained. There is a spring up above that adds a certain amount of water so it maintains its water level. And we put 3 raceway units in there to start with, but we've come up with our own design now. So we're replacing the Superior Raceways units with something that you could make at home. So this is what the pond looked like to start with. See what I mean about weeds? This pond down below the hill here looked like this at one time. Watershed pond with an NRCS design, bass and bluegill. There was a professor that had used it with cages at one time, and Dr. Webster, I think, had cages out there for a number of years. But it is not managed for fish production. So we've put in used some of the dock sections that were there, and this is an example of our early raceway system. This is what it looks like in the wintertime. It gets cold, and the water freezes, and the ducks from the spring find these raceways because that's open water, and they can hang around there. So, but yes, the water doesn't freeze in the raceway. It can run year-round. But you can be darn sure that the fish aren't doing much at this time of year. And it's not uncommon for us simply to let them lie fallow during the winter and put fish in them for the spring. We do have otters in this area, and otters tend to be a problem more in the winter than the summer. So the milestones here are, we had filamentous algae, so we put in grass carp and koi to control the vegetation. And we began doing things in 2017, added an aerator to destratify the pond, because you can have bad water in the bottom, and so if you mix it, that helps get rid of that. We stocked raceways and began running them, stocked with catfish. We had a heavy, in 2021, we had about 14,000 pounds of catfish that we grew in that pond down there. That's too much. Don't do it. You pollute the pond and you have ammonia issues. And anyway, we're not going that way. we are going with a smaller volume to a fish that has a higher price. So we don't have to put as much feed to make a buck. So we're going with largemouth bass. We have also done some other things here. There are catfish in the pond now that are spawning, and we can go put out cans and collect eggs, and we can make little catfish if we need to. So we do collect catfish spawns. We put paddlefish in there to filter the water, and they provide a brood stock for us that we use here at the Aquaculture Research Center. We really want more in the way of bluegill, but there was one thing that got in the way. We had some bass escape. So it's heavy on the bass side, and that means if you're a bluegill, it's kind of a tenuous life. So we don't have a lot of bluegill in the pond. The fish that are there most likely are growing very well, but most of them are eaten by the bass. Now, moving the water and aerating the water at the same time by having bubbles is a smart way to go. It can also move a lot of water. This is an example of a grid airlift. And so, let's see, whoops. Here we go, this thing. That is the grid. And that hose goes back to an air blower, so we're blowing air into the water, and it creates bubbles, just a whole square rush of bubbles to the surface. And if we enclose that, we direct the water to go where we want it to go. Okay? We run it continuously. It's a high volume, low pressure device called an air blower supplying the air, not an air compressor, not something you get at the Tractor Supply or something like that. This is a regenerative blower, so it's high volume and low pressure. The pressure we need is just enough to push it down about maybe 3 feet and push it through those hoses in the bottom, and so the air goes through the diffuser. And it's quite a reliable device. So it aerates the water and circulates the water. And we put that device at the head. Here it says device, device, device. These are small raceways, and these are the larger raceways here. We're going now and we're changing all of these, so we'll have 2 small raceways in each bay where the large raceway was. And the smaller raceways are raceways we can make, and I'll show you one in a minute. Actually, Jeffrey, can you pull that little model in? All right. So this is what it looked like early on, and we were trying, hey, can you use solar energy to make it go? Not if you're going to run a half-horse unit continuously through the year. Here's an example of the idea. I don't know if I can hold this in any way. There's a frame around the top. There's screens that slide in keyways. This little, well, it's in the end here, this is where the grid airlift would be, and it would push water through there. And so this is the frame. This is the side material is just plastic. And the bottom has an edge on it. We're using steel, 2-inch steel angle. We'd use a plywood floor. And we can make it whatever depth we want, but we figure we want to be there in waders to be able to handle the fish. We can walk in these things, all right? There's flotation on either end to keep everything floating. And so the depth we use is no more than 4 feet. Actually, 3.5 is more comfortable to work in. If you're short, we can make it 3 feet deep, okay? And we did that for one woman. But these are, the concept is a frame, and everything is suspended from the frame. And the frame then is where the flotation force is applied. Okay? Now, let's see here. So here's the same thing with a drawing. This shows a flotation on this end. We have barrels. Although we've decided an IBC tote gives you more flotation, we want to be able to ratchet it up so we can set the freeboard. The freeboard is the distance between the water level and the top of the frame. See those boards up and down? Those are keyways, and that's where we could put in a screen. Let's see, it looks like, I don't remember which way. Yeah, this end is where the air blower you see on top of the IBC tote is an air blower, and underneath that would be the grid airlift. Yes?
You asked earlier if there's something.
Fire away.
Okay, so if you have that air blower and it's blowing air and aerating the raceway, what if you had that air blower inflating both sides? Okay, suppose you have like a hard wire mesh side, both sides, but you have like a plastic air bubble thing that's being held up like a curtain, and the blower is keeping that curtain up, and allowing the thing to be a raceway. Okay, in the event that that blower would stop working, okay, like a power outage, that inflated curtain would just fall down. And then you have a floating cage, and it could survive the night during a power outage. What do you think about that?
I'm sorry, Bob, I don't think much of it. Okay. For a variety of reasons. Firstly, it's complicated to make. And you're counting on a failure of power or something to make it worth your while. I would rather invest in a backup generator than try to do that. The other thing is, if you raise the sides and you end up having a cage, you have no more direction of flow through the raceway carrying the waste out. Okay? If the water can leave the side, it's not going to go the direction.
That would just be during that emergency time.
Okay. But the time when the fish are going to need access to the most water, that is, when you have no, let's say you have no oxygen from the airlift, and you may be assuming that there's no oxygen in the pond around. You could have low oxygen there, but those are both low risk events. It's hard for me to explain. Just the way using these raceways and building the raceways, I don't think it's a good choice. I'm sorry.
I just see having like 150 days of perfect everything ideal, fish are growing like crazy, then all of a sudden you have a 3-hour power outage, and then all the fish die suddenly.
Okay.
If you had like a backup, if it turned into a cage all of a sudden for those
Yeah.
3 hours, then your fish might survive.
I understand. We have a backup generator, and that's what we use. Okay. All right. Enough about that. Here's an example of the raceway as we're building it now. So you can see the frame. Oops. Well, the frame, like this one has a frame around the edge, so does that one. You can see the keyways. You can see the plastic on the side. And yes, there's some flexibility to that plastic, but if you had to pay for materials and build it with materials and so forth, where it just makes it cheaper to make. It's not providing support. It's simply containing the fish, and the raceway itself is suspended from the frame. The flotation is, the force of the flotation is applied to the frame. Again, we can have a different depth, but the rearing space is about 21 feet long. All right, so here's a couple of pictures showing how it's built. We start with the floor, and we secure everything, and then we put the sides on it. We have a little support while we're making these things that's removed after the whole thing is done. And this shows most of what's there. I'm sure there's some things left over. Some of the cross braces and so forth still need to be in, but it's just kind of a basic idea. When you're executing it, deciding exactly where to put a support and so forth. There are reasons we do what we do, but we're also on, let's see, we've made 6 of these so far. There's 5 of them here, 6, 7, 8 of these. And we transport them we just put wheels under it and we can launch it like a boat. So again, the real nice thing about the grid airlift is it does aerate continuously, and it moves a lot of water. Anywhere from 600 to 1,000 gallons a minute can be moved through that raceway. We made screens with fiberglass. We don't want a screen that's going to float. You know, you want to drop it in there, it wants to stay in there, and something stiff, and that's a vinyl coated steel. So actually, we're using high cost materials on our screens. You don't want the fish to get out, all right? And we're using stainless steel hardware on that as well. So here's a flow rated at 1,350 gallons a minute. That's about 32 exchanges per hour. That means you can fill it 32 times over the course of an hour. The usage of power, it would be around $51 a month for a half horsepower unit at 11 cents a kilowatt hour. And we can put and make a raft. We can put these units side by side and make a raft. So in this case, you have a walkway, and if you had another one, it could just continue. And I have 3 of them in a small pond at the Aquaculture Research Center where it's a walkway, and anyway, it works. Now, there's different configurations. That is, you can use it in different ways. Most often we think about aquatic feedlot, and that's what I started out with. You can also use it as a nursery, where maybe you can buy fish cheap, small fish, and you want to have more fish in your pond. Rather than buying big fish, expensive fish, you could buy small fish, you could feed them to a size, and you could let them go into the pond at your leisure. Now we're also trying something out there right now where we put golden shiners. We bought 150 pounds of golden shiners, and we put them in the raceway, and we're just trying to grow little golden shiners into big golden shiners. Golden shiners, the price we had to pay for them was $6 a pound. Now, if you go to the bait shop, you're going to pay a lot more than that. But if they're worth $6 a pound at a 2-inch size, and they're worth $6 a pound at a 4-inch size, we think that would be a nice outcome, because we can get $6 a pound then for what we grow. We don't know yet. We're just starting on this, but that's where we're at. So you can use it as a nursery, and this is what we're doing in the Aquaculture Research Center. But another thing you can do is you can use it as a trap. You use floating feed. You can feed the same raceway day in and day out. This works especially well with catfish. Bass, not so much. Catfish come in well. I bet koi would come in well too. And so we harvested 1,200 pounds out of the pond after we had our catfish season, using it as a trap. So there's different ways of using it. Who would use it? Maybe an existing farm, someone who's growing largemouth bass, someone's holding fish for market, maybe needing more production units, a fee fish or a pay lake, a live fish distributor, a commercial fisherman, a sporting club. I can see a lake that you might share with your buddies. Of course, I don't have time for that, but more power to you if you have that option. an individual simply wanting to use for personal use or for community. You could probably grow fish in there and have a fishing day for the 4-H crew or something, or even just have a stash, or if you want food for dinner, just run down and get a few fish for dinner. So the fish you grow need to be willing to accept the feed you provide. Catfish work. In the winter, you can do rainbow trout. Largemouth bass can be trained to feed. Hybrid striped bass will take feed very well. Tilapia during the summer would probably, I wonder how these would grow I keep pointing at Jeffrey because I know he's messing with tilapia and with koi and all these things, but I think they would probably do very nicely in the raceway. Yellow perch will accept, well, we don't have folks growing yellow perch to speak of, do we, Gunnar? Anybody growing yellow perch here? Okay. But they can be trained to feed. Koi carp, and who knows, golden shiners, maybe bluegill, not so much.
Fish and Wildlife doesn't allow yellow perch.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. So here's an example of running a ton of catfish, and I'll stop after I do this. The idea being able to grow a crop of catfish in a raceway. You might start with about 2,000 fish, and you might figure that you'd recover about 90% of those if everything goes right. You'd stock a large fingerling at the beginning of the year because you want it to make market size by the end of the year. You start with a small fish, you're going to grow a small fish. It takes time, and the growing season is just so long. If you're going to make market at the end of the year, you need to start with a big fish. So about an 8-inch fish. Stock at the beginning of the year, and this is a simulation that I ran, feeding the fish to satiation, and if you were feed conversion is about 1.7. And I'm assuming that they're not going to grow as much as they possibly can, but they're going to grow about 80% of that. And actually, it turns out you get better feed efficiency if you don't feed the fish so much that they just can't eat anymore. If you feed them so they're still a little hungry, they convert a little better. And this is what it looks like from a pound standpoint. You start in January with about 280 pounds, and in February you got about 280 pounds. Why? It's cold. They're not eating. But for the simulation, so maybe you just end up stocking them in May. That's when they're going to start growing. And June and July are great times, but in terms of pounds of fish, here you're starting with about 280. This looks like it's about 300. This may be a little over 400. So you've got a scale here of 500. And so you're going from this to this the next month. This is all at the beginning of each month. And by September, you pretty much have going to grow what you can grow. And those fish may weigh a little over 2,000. So if you had 2,000 to start with and you have 2,000 pounds, they're over a pound each. There's a scenario for you. Number of fish on the far right. Cumulative amount of feed, 3,463 pounds is an estimate at the end of the year. And the total weight goes from 200. So you got to like not quite a tenfold increase in weight from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And your average weight is over a pound. That's the goal. Honestly, it's probably not a good idea to push so hard the first year. Start with 1,000 fish. Make your market. And as you learn more about growing fish, you'll be able to push closer to this target. Okay, and we did it with trout too, but I think that's enough, unless you want to see the trout too. What do you think? Whoops. So the trout, you start in October. It gets colder, but you get a little bit of growth. Okay, you're starting with large fish. I don't have all the assumptions in here. And you're starting with a fish that, again, is probably about 8, maybe even 10 inches long. You're going to end up with a fish that's maybe 15 inches long, weighing maybe 1.25 pounds or so, certainly over 1 pound. But the real growth occurs in March and April. And then water temperatures increase, and you got to get rid of them before it gets too hot. So you can see maybe the idea of growing trout during the winter and then catfish during the summer in the same unit. So you just have to be able to get the stocks you need when you need them. But I'm going to stop there, if that's all right. That explains a little bit about where we're going, and if anyone in particular wants to see what we have down the hill, let me know and I'll be happy to show you. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, the skin is the most vulnerable part of your body because everybody is almost exposed to the skin. Say you're wearing a shirt or you're wearing a hat as myself. I always protect my head, Or, and all of us know that farmers spend a lot of time in the field, So, farmers are most at risk of skin cancer because they spend a lot of time under the sun. And it's month of May today. As a matter of fact, we appealed to the governor to declare May as Skin Cancer Awareness Month. Mr. Dekusi, in charge of external relations at KSU, I spoke with him 3 days ago, and he assured me that he will be here to make the declaration if the governor does not send a representative. Actually, he has all the documentation, so hopefully he'll be here. So, as we all know, the theme for Skin Cancer Month is sun protection is more important today than yesterday. So this is actually to create awareness of the fact that we need to protect our bodies, our skin from the sun. I guess. Okay, which button do I have to press here? The big one? Okay. No. Okay. So, skin cancer is the most common type of cancer. And 1 of every 5 Americans is expected to develop it at the age of 70. And melanoma is the type of skin cancer the most deadly. In fact, between 2011 and 2021, a space of 10 years, there's been an increase of 44% in the incidence of skin cancer. And the American Academy of Dermatology urges all Americans to protect themselves from the sun in order to minimize the risk of skin cancer. So as I said earlier, this is very important to Kentucky farmers as the rate they are increasing predominantly among agricultural counties in the state, and also among low-income farmers. Why is that so? Because low-income farmers, unlike large corporations that probably by regulations, they give their workers protective gear, they have breaks and so on. But low-income farmers are almost independent farmers. So they don't have that pressure to abide by the rules. So we need to protect them, educate them in order to protect themselves. So farmers whose outdoor work exposes them to excessive amount of the sun must be aware of our ongoing campaign and encouraged to adopt preventive and protective measures. Let's look at some statistics here. From that map, you can see that Kentucky is among the highest in the country, highest incidence of skin cancer in the country. And the incidence in 2021 shows that Kentucky was 23% higher in terms of skin cancer incidence than the US average. And it is estimated that new cases in 2025 will be 1,490, while deaths are estimated to be 110. And this relates to melanoma, which is the deadliest of skin cancers. So the question is, what is skin cancer? Of course, it's the most common and the most preventable of all. It's highly treatable when caught early. Skin cancer, like colon cancer, like prostate cancer, like breast cancer, are those cancers that, when detected early, they're highly curable. There are three main types: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Of course, basal cell carcinomas are the most common. As you can see from that diagram there, those only occur on the surface. But with melanoma goes deep into the dermis and, of course, the hypodermis, the lower layers of the skin. And eventually, when they enter the bloodstream, they metastasize from there. What are the risk factors? Family history. If you have direct parents or cousins who had skin cancer, you're susceptible to that. Ultraviolet radiation. Tanning beds are most dangerous because the radiation, the ultraviolet rays are there trying to color your skin, brown your skin. That's pretty dangerous. Of course, fair-skinned people, those who burn easily, and certain type of moles. If you have 20 or more moles on your skin, you stand a greater risk of developing skin cancer. Age is another factor. Most victims of skin cancer are probably in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and above. And race also is a factor. As you can see, melanoma is 20 times more common in whites than blacks and Hispanics. However, the incidence and mortality rate is increasing among non-whites past 30 years. And also increasing among youths, 30 years and younger. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms are pretty clear. You can see your skin, right? So whenever your skin changes, take note of it and maybe report to your doctor. So how does it appear? It appears as certain growths or moles of different shapes, maybe scaly patches, some brown patches under the skin or nails, and some non-healing sores on your body, maybe symptoms of skin cancer. So when you see all of this, please see a primary care physician who will definitely direct you to see a specialist, a dermatologist, for further examination. Farmers SunSmart Kentucky. Again, this is our extension program that we've just developed to educate farmers and farm workers about skin cancer, provide them more information how to protect themselves, and also involve cooperative extension agents who will definitely provide such assistance. Now, how can we protect ourselves? How can we reduce the incidence of skin cancer among farmers, especially? It's pretty easy. Shades, cover up, long sleeve shirts, wide brim hats, sunshades, and of course, sunscreens. Preferably sunscreens with an SPF 30 or higher. Avoid tanning birds. Number of moles. It's estimated that 20 more moles, when you develop more than 20 or more moles, you stand a greater risk of developing skin cancer. Family history. Over 10% of people with melanoma have a family history. So the risk is higher with first-degree relatives who have had the disease. Now let's look at the role of cooperative extension agents. Because all what we do in our research here at KSU, we do it because we take care of farmers. That information has to reach to the farmers. So the role of cooperative extension agents in skin cancer production falls within the scope of practice for delivering health programs envisaged in the 2014 Cooperative Extension National Framework for Health and Wellness. Cooperative extension agents are in a better position to educate farmers and farm workers not only on how to protect themselves from the sun, but also to reduce the risk of developing skin cancer. And also by educating them of what? Photoprotection, use of sunbeds, for example. Because if you don't do that, you have brown, freckled skin easily as you grow older. And also in the selection of sunscreens. Cooperative extension agents can help farmers select the type of sunscreens that they can use while working under the sun. There's a study that concluded that the general public does not have enough information in deciding the key factors to consider when choosing sunscreens. So cooperative extension agents can help in that also. Again, cooperative extension agents know and provide up-to-date information, should know and provide up-to-date information on sunscreen products, especially those considered to be high in sun protection factor or those that have broad coverage. We all know that cooperative extension agents are what? Trusted educators when it comes to the rural communities. So they must give advice to farmers. By doing that, they're encouraged to comply with skin cancer medical advice already received and help farmers navigate get to sources of information that will help them. And our research here will definitely do that. because we intend to have a repository of skin cancer information at the end of our current study. So, they got to refer farmers to such resources, and also skin cancer myths and misinformation. When you go to rural communities, many folks will say, oh, skin cancer is a white man's disease, which is false. Yes, skin cancer, the rate of skin cancer among whites is up to 20 times that of blacks. But when you look at the statistics nowadays, the incidence rate is increasing among minorities. Maybe change in lifestyle and other things. But such information now has to reach farmers. Corporate extension agents have to educate the farmers. Hey, it's not only whites that can have that disease. Blacks and Hispanics also do have it at an increasing level. However, a word of caution here. Corporate extension agents should only provide that information, such information that it shouldn't cross the line to medical advice. When that occurs, they should refer farmers to healthcare providers. So, generally, corporate extension agents should encourage farmers to check with the healthcare providers who can give them individualized and accurate information. SunSmart Kentucky. Again, this is KSU's education program for farmers and farm workers. There you can see our skin cancer research team here at KSU. And also we have our grants to study skin cancer in Kentucky farmers. A lot of studies have been done. A few studies have been done, actually, not too many studies on farmers. And none so far is in Kentucky. There are a few that have been done in California, a few in North Carolina. But when you look at Kentucky, no data at all. So that is why we wrote this study, to make sure that Kentucky farmers have the awareness, the knowledge, and also, to assess whether the knowledge that they have is up to date, to make sure that they are aware of it, and also to study the prevalence of skin cancer among Kentucky farmers. This was a USDA capacity building grant study that we had last year. So we're almost done with the first objective, that is developing a survey instrument. We are now validating it, and sometime this summer we hit the road, assessing skin cancer in almost every county in Kentucky. Kentucky is divided into 15 area development districts that has about 5 to 10 counties. So the idea is, if we can survey at least 3 counties per area development district, we may have covered the whole of Kentucky. We're looking at distributing surveys to about 5,000 farmers in Kentucky. And we will have the Kentucky Farm Alliance, which is a non-profit organization of about 1,500 farmers involved in it. Of course, we'll have Kentucky corporate extension agents involved in it. We'll have UK corporate extension agents involved in it. And this is a multi-institutional study involving Northern Kentucky University and Berea College. So we'll hit the road this summer, distributing the surveys, and I promise you, next year we'll be here again to deliver some of the results. Thank you very much. Any questions before? Okay, let me go back to so May is Skin Cancer Month, and we're fortunate to reach out to the governor of the state, Governor Brashear, to make sure that he declares May as Skin Cancer Month. Do a proclamation. Today we have our Vice President for External Relations, Mr. Michael DeCoucy, to do that for us. Thank you. Of course, he's represented the governor here, and he has a thank you.
You can stand up there. Yes. So I'm Michael. You can just call me Michael. We got Elias in the back. Are we live streaming, Elias? Or recording? Is that the camera right there so we can do it right into that? Perfect. I just like to ask the question before I look silly on video. But Dr. Bebe, I'm going to read it out loud for you. Thank you, everyone, for coming for this one. So for everyone watching at a future date, this is from Governor Bashir. To all to whom these presents shall come, whereas skin cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the United States, with more than 5 million cases treated each year, and rates continue to rise across the nation, including the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Whereas early detection and prevention through sun safety practice, such as using sunscreen, wearing protective clothing, and avoiding tanning beds, are critical to reducing the risk of skin cancer and to save lives. And increase public awareness and education about the dangers of overexposure to ultraviolet rays, especially among youth and outdoor workers, are vital to combating this preventable disease. The Commonwealth of Kentucky recognizes the importance of supporting research, screening efforts, and community initiatives that promote healthy behaviors and reduce the burden of skin cancer on our families and our healthcare system. And whereas Kentucky State University continues to advance public health through community education and scientific research, including efforts to promote skin cancer awareness, preventative practices, and health equity across the Commonwealth. Now, therefore, I, Andy Bashir, I'm just reading it on his behalf, and the Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky do hereby proclaim the month of May Skin Cancer Awareness Month. So congratulations, thank you all for what you do. This is on behalf of everybody at the Commonwealth supporting us.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand again, please. On behalf of the governor. All right.
Thank you all very much. You want a photo?
Yes.
But thanks for all you do. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. One more time, please. All right, this brings to an end our talk on skin cancer. Any questions, please, before we leave? Any questions? Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike.